Hello, this is Eugenia with Radiant Warrior Living. I am here today with you to talk about um, the different roles we play in our lives and our identity and how the two come together and how we manage to sort of play the roles, but how um, our identity can be sometimes taken over by the roles that we play. And if we stay in the roles for a long time, we identify fully with that role, and sometimes it becomes sort of who we are. We take on that role so fully that we truly kind of lose ourselves and our true identity in that role. So, just a quick intro. I am a coach and speaker. I help professional women to connect to who they are and find their voice. And the work that I do is either one-on-one work or group work. I also do workshops. My website is www.radiantwarriorliving.com if you want to find out more. So today, again, we'll talk about the roles that we all play and how it connects to our identity, and how the roles that we play can limit who we are and expand who we are as well. So the importance of staying aware of the roles that we take on and how much we allow those roles to take over our life. So I'll start with just a quick kind of segue into, our childhoods. And, we all have had a childhood and we've all had very different experiences. But since we've been kids, we've been taught to really, be actors and play different roles. And if the roles that we played did not fit into what others expected of us, we quickly were taught, or we quickly learned, and those of us, maybe that weren't that easily disciplined, maybe took a longer time to learn, but we definitely all learned to understand that certain roles have had a certain expectations and certain behaviors attached to it, and if you didn't fulfill that role, and if your behavior was different than people expected, then it would be considered a wrong, and it would be a mistake, and you would get in trouble for it. So we've learned since we were kids to be, when we were in daycare, there were certain roles that we had to play as kids in daycare. When we were in school, the role of a student at school is to listen, to be a certain way, and to behave a certain way. And the teachers around us took their role, and the expectations were that the teachers were doing this and the students were doing this. So all of us are very familiar with different roles. Very often, though, we play the roles and we take on different roles without understanding that those roles are the boxes that we sort of step into, and we can live in those boxes for years and take on all the expectations, behaviors, and all the things that are associated with the roles. And very often we don't realize that we sort of are so fully identified with the roles, with that specific role, that we play it and we live it and we allow it to become who we are. So I see roles as a clothes that we wear, and we can put on different roles. I mean, all of us probably, or well, if your parents are no longer alive, you're still a child. I mean, you were a child to them, to your parents, so that you played a role of a child, which would mean, in different families, different things, but your parents would want you to call them, you'd go visit, your parents always, worried about you. It doesn't matter, or most parents did, it doesn't matter how old you were, you're still a child to your parents, and your parents were the parents to you, or are parents to you. So it's basically, you were wearing, you're putting on a certain cloak or certain clothes that you wear as part of the role. So if you're a parent, a mother or father, there's certain clothes that you wear as a parent, and there's certain behaviors that are expected of you as a parent. And very often, we as women, I find, take on the role of a mother, for example, and that role becomes the all-encompassing role that takes over who we are, because we feel that what's expected of us as a mother is a lot of things. We have to behave a certain way. We have to be there for our kids. So we have to put our kids first. We have to be present. We have to show up in various places. We have to be involved in our kids' lives and fully be there for them. And very often that role becomes the role that takes over the rest of our lives. And we forget about sort of the importance of other things in our lives. And sometimes, it's the guilt, sometimes it's other things that keep us sort of taking on that role. And what happens is, for example, for a lot of mothers who have been there for their kids and who have sacrificed a lot of their life and have given a lot to their children and have not had the space and have not had the opportunity to do other things while they were, for example, raising their kids. When the kids grow up, and you've been a mom for 15, 20 years, and that's become part of your identity, so something that you associate with very, very deeply, what happens is very often there is an identity crisis because the kids no longer need you. The kids no longer are in your life every day, and they've moved out and they've moved on with their life, and you feel a certain sense of emptiness and a certain sense of I guess sadness and potentially regret, or sometimes just you feel that something is missing because you no longer are needed in that role, and you've associated with that role for so long that you don't know who you are anymore. And that's that's normal for a lot of people. I mean, for men, the example would be a lot of men have had a career for a very, very long time. So, for example, a doctor who's been practicing in his role for 50, 60 years, and that's been he's been a doctor, so he's been playing a role of a doctor in a lot of people's lives. He's respected by patients. He's viewed as a very valuable member of society. He is very prominent member of his community. People come to him for advice. When he's asked who he is or what he is doing, he says, I'm a doctor. So there's a role that he plays, and he's been playing for such a long time that it becomes who he is. And even at home, he might have a hard time, being other roles. And, that role of a doctor becomes such a big part of who he is. And when it comes time to retire, it's very hard to step out of that role and be somebody else, or kind of not be somebody else, but be kind of what is your identity? If that's been who you were, and who you have lived as, and wore the clothes of the doctor for a long time, because people have talked to you and associated with you and have related to you as a doctor. So it's a very it's a very interesting conundrum in a way that the roles that we play can really truly create the life in that that we live. And what I'd like to talk about is being aware, and sort of there's nothing wrong with any roles that we have to take on or that we play in our lives, as long as we don't allow those roles to limit who we are. And sometimes it's really hard to step out of a role. For example, as a parent, it's hard to step out of that role if you have your kids around you. But it's really about noticing, are you, sort of playing the role of a parent, and are you putting yourself in a box that limits who you are? Because very often, you'd hear, well, moms don't do this, like sort of taking risks or doing certain things. And sometimes it's hard to mesh together certain roles, right? So, for example, being a mother and sort of being a career woman are the two roles that sometimes are hard to bring together. And a lot of women do it. I've been that woman myself for a very, very long time. And, oftentimes these roles can be clashing in a way of priorities and expectations and behavior, because as a parent, as a mother, you are expected to do so many things, and you have to be certain places, and you have to put your kids first. As a career woman and somebody who is in a certain place in an organization, or a self-employed person, you have to be and put your business and put your job at a big place, at a high place and at a big priority in your life. And when you're not able to do that because of your children, others look at you as somebody who is not committed, who is not fully, or not playing the role very well. So all these things, they can be very conflicting to each other. And very often women in the workplace, especially if they have, they're in a high position, they have a hard time combining the, being a mom and being sort of an executive. And even though, you have the help, you still have to be there for your kids, and you have to be there for certain meetings. And sometimes the two can really, be an issue. So, today, the reason I'm doing this is because, I myself have been, called a mother, a career woman, a volunteer, and a daughter, and a sibling, and a spouse, and all of us have these different roles. And when we identify with one specific role too much, then we totally limit ourselves. And sometimes when we take on a role, it can be a role that can truly open up some other possibilities for us, and open up an understanding that we're capable of a lot more than we thought we were. And that's where I think the roles are actually very valuable, as long as we don't let that clothes that we wear, that role, completely take over who we are. So, I want to give an example of, for example, even being a mother. A lot of women, when we have kids, we have a certain idea of who we are, and we have a certain idea of our personality and our character. But we have this bundle of joy coming into our life, and it opens up an absolutely new possibility, an absolutely new space in us to be so loving, to be so sacrificing, and to be so giving, and in a physical way, in a mental and emotional and a spiritual way. So I think taking on the role of a mother can truly open up so much in who we are, and understand our capacity for heroic actions, for being a very strong person who will always be there for her kids, and can go through literally the fire to do it. We've seen many examples in history of that. So the roles again can really truly open up and expand who we are. So it's about, and oftentimes, as a career woman, or as a business person, we can take on a role, and through that role, we can realize how resilient, how strong we are. So what roles do we have, which roles do you have in your life that, limit you, and which roles expand you? And other roles that you maybe don't want to take on because you're not sure that the role suits you, or maybe it will ask too much of you. So I want to share some practical tips of how the roles that we play can truly help us live an interesting life and connect to who we are, as well as expand our horizons and allow us to grow as human beings. So it's first and foremost about awareness. So it's having that sense of understanding that the different roles that you play, how much of that have you been living with, and how much of that has been dictating your behavior and who you are. So it's about kind of really tuning in and understanding how much of you is associated with the role. Because when people ask you, who are you, or what do you do, what is your answer? Do you really identify as a specific, like, I'm a mother, I'm a career woman? Sometimes it's interesting to play with your answers and kind of see the different reactions that you get. I find that sometimes it's okay to think of yourself as just a human being, and you're here being. It's not always about doing something and fulfilling someone's expectation of yourself, because I think we're all socialized to bring value to the society, which is normal, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's more about how we sometimes fear that we'll be perceived as non-valuable members of the society if we're not sharing the different roles that we play. But it's allowing yourself to step out of the role and to kind of have the identity of you, just you, without the role. That is, and to observe how you feel in that. Are you comfortable? Are you not comfortable? What feelings does it bring? Does it bring a feeling of exhilaration because there's so many possibilities? Or does it bring a certain fear on that you're not sure how people are going to perceive you, and you're not sure kind of what, whether your life is worthy and somebody will perceive you as worthy? So it's interesting to experiment with that, just to see kind of where your feelings are and how much you identify with the different roles that you play and how much you value yourself. I mean, it's important, all your accomplishments are great, but you are, as a human being, you're here being present. And oftentimes when we associate ourselves with different roles, we also push that expectation on others, and we expect them to to fulfill certain roles as well. So when we allow ourselves to just be and not always fulfill a role, or not always show the world that we're fulfilling a role, and just be a human being with sort of an identity that has different roles as part of it, but as an identity that's not attached to a specific role, then what's showing up for you? What are you able to be in that moment, and to not allow your ego and the agenda of the world and your own agenda of wanting to be perceived a certain way drive you. So it's really being observant and understanding what shows up for you. And the second thing is trying to and working on when you're, for example, in a restaurant and you're talking to a waiter, are you talking to them as a customer, as somebody who potentially is kind of better than them, or are you just there as a human being talking to another human being? So it's interesting to catch yourself and see how you interact in different circumstances, and trying to not play different roles, but actually just be in that moment and just show up without putting them in a certain box and putting yourself in a certain box, and interact from that point of view and see what shows up. At least experiment with it and allow yourself that possibility, and push yourself to really understand how much the different roles that you have played in your life have created a story sometimes, because we all, our life is a story, and we all have a certain perception from our childhood into our school days and into our post-secondary life, after school life. Some people went to university, some people started working, so we've all had different experiences, and those those experiences shaped who we are, but we also have played different roles throughout that. And at times, we played the role of a child, the role of a victim, the role of maybe a predator or aggressor sometimes. So how did this roles shaped the story of your life and shaped who you are today? And it's really understanding the roles that you played, and kind of where you were coming from and what boxes you were in those times, that can truly help you understand and relate to your story, and at times to maybe reshape your story in your mind, and understand how things have progressed and how things have moved forward, because it will allow you to make sense of certain things that maybe you have accepted without truly understanding what happened and your role in something. Because a lot of the times when we are looking to change something, or when we're looking to understand and make sense of our experiences, we need to take that time and to step into it and understand our role in it, and to take responsibility in what part did we play in that story, and also make sense of it, as in how it shaped us, what it left in us, what these experiences have meant for us, and how they've shaped who we are, our identity. So I really recommend for somebody who is sort of curious and sometimes looks back, and there's moments when we are going through changes, or when we are going through certain experiences in our lives, or when something is missing and we start wondering what's our life has been, what have we been through, and we're looking to maybe transform certain things, or looking to find something new, or to connect to who we are. It's important to look back and understand how the different experiences shaped who we are, and also see our life as a story, and see what role we've taken on as part of the story. And very often it would help us see how that trajectory has taken us to where we are today, and what we can do to move forward. And it would also allow us to be a little bit more playful around understanding our experiences, and kind of having a sense of empowerment around being able to reshape our life, and having a sense of control, and having a sense of knowing where you want your life to go, and having a sense of connection to who you are and where you want to go next. So I really recommend that. And just a quick point before we close off on the different roles that can expand who we are. There's many roles that we can take on that can bring sort of a different sense of adventure in our life. And I think if you're able to look at your life as a story you're writing, and from a sense of creativity, and that every day is special, and that every day is a chapter. How different would your life be? How different would your days be? Would you relate to your life and appreciate every moment? And would you do something different? Would you be more deliberate? Would you be more aware? Would you be more grateful? It's important to look at life that way, and to look at your days, and to look at what you're doing, how you're living your life, and how you're feeling in a specific moment, so that you can get a sense of kind of imminence and importance of the moment today, and being present in the now, and connecting to your true identity, because you are who you are, and that's the precious part. And you are unique, and your footprint is unique, and the roles that you play are just the roles that you play, and your identity is who you truly are. So if this was helpful, and you can think of all the different roles that you've been playing and that you've taken on, allow yourself to look at some other roles that you can take on. A role of risk taker, a role of a rebel, a role of someone who wants to experiment, and try something new every day. What are some roles that you potentially could try? It's a good, you could look at archetypes and see, there's lots of different archetypes that kind of are associated with some roles. There's an archetype of a warrior, there's an archetype of a magician. I find that when you think of archetypes, they are sort of they have characters associated with them, which can help you associate with that archetype, and see how you can bring up different parts of that archetype, the different characters within yourself, to be that, and to experience it in a different way, and to see how that would create a new experience in your life, and also allow yourself to see yourself differently, and to see yourself grow, and to see yourself expand, and allow yourself to be you. So I wish you all the best of luck, and if you have any comments, if you have any thoughts on how the roles in your life have played a part in shaping your life, and how you understand your roles and connect it with your identity, I'd love to hear more. And the next live show will be next Thursday, and I look forward to seeing you there. Thank you for everybody who's been watching.